107.5 The Game Podcasting is sponsored by Modern Exterminating, a family-oriented company. Professional, honest, and dependable pest control solutions. We're your one-stop shop for all pests. We do it all. We know what bugs you. Visit us online at pestfreesc.com. That's pestfreesc.com.
And welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you here on the game. Wednesday means it's officially 1 week since spring practice began. A couple of practice sessions in the books. And as we're going to hear throughout the spring, a lot of assistants getting to talk to the media, guys we don't usually hear from during the season. And yesterday that included Mike Furry, of course, wide receivers coach, going into his second year in that position here at South Carolina, talking about a number of things, and a couple of different things I want to hit on here is kind of what's going on in the wide receiver room. We'll start off with, I think, the biggest question that anybody has when it comes to the wide receiver room is obviously the progression and development of Nyck Harbor, especially considering the fact that he's focusing solely on being a wide receiver and playing football in this offseason as opposed to track. And here is Coach Furry yesterday giving his thoughts on Nyck Harbor coming into form as a wide receiver.
I think the biggest thing is maturity, right? And you know, I without getting too much into it, and Nyck can speak a lot about it on his own and when he talks to you guys. But I think when you look at a Nyck Harbor, I think everybody's expectations for Nyck exceeded what his expectations were because he was so inexperienced at playing the position. And but when you look at his body size, you would just assume that he would be able to go out there and just dominate every game and every situation. Well, there's a lot that goes on to play wide out. I mean, it's not just running. I mean, you got to run as fast as you can. You got to get in and out of transitions. You got to be able to snap your head around. You got to be able to catch the ball when it's in flight, and you better be able to catch that ball while you're running 100 miles an hour after, at that ball. There's a lot that goes on, and he just hadn't at that time really experienced a lot of that stuff, right? It was all just speculation. And I think now the biggest thing for Nyck that we're all excited about, including himself, is he's caught balls in games. He's went and got footballs. We've relied on him on some past stuff last year, and I think towards the end of the season, the touchdown against the Missouri, I think it was, or the ball he caught over the shoulder against Missouri, and then the touchdown coming back against Akron or whatnot, and kind of starting to get in the flow of things. That builds confidence, right? And I think the more and more he becomes confident with himself, the more we'll start exceeding our expectations of what we think of Nyck Harbor. And I think the other thing too for Nyck, I think the best thing about Nyck is, I told Nyck this the other day, the best thing that ever could happen to Nyck is these six freshmen that are coming in. Because they don't, they're going to come in here and just do everything they can and do it right and do it as fast as they can, and he's going to be able to learn from them a little bit too, of how you're supposed to do stuff and see it the right way, and then be able to go out and emulate that also and add that to his game. And so it's kind of hand in hand with him coming back with experience, and then the new guys coming in that are going to be able to push him. And he's had 3 really good days here at spring.
This isn't a new conversation we've had about Harbor. Really kind of had this since he got to campus, and when you hear Coach Furry say that, again, the guy that's been a wide receiver at the highest level, maybe it resonates with people a little bit more. There's so much nuance to this position. Again, it's not just being fast and being able to outrun somebody. You got to be able to run your route, jump up, catch the ball, bring it down, secure it, take off and run, break tackles, all those kind of things that, being a part of the team for half the year doesn't give you the ability to round into true form with that quite how you want to. And for the past 2 years he's been on campus, he's not been there for a full spring practice. This year's different. And again, instead of starting back at 0 or close to 0, like maybe he had to do last year, it's starting off with where you ended the season, improving on that, and again, hopefully being leaps and bounds better by the time the Virginia Tech game rolls around at the end of August.
Let me also say, guys, I appreciate Mike Furry for giving these highly detailed answers, and I think certainly in our seat, but I think the fans too appreciate that. This was a thorough, fair, not over the top, too positive, but not negative. It just, hey, this is how we see where things are with Nyck Harbor.
It wasn't coach speak.
It was not coach speak, and you got some really few. I would encourage people to listen to his entire press conference or read our transcript. Shameless plug on Gamecock Central, because it had a lot of good detail on a lot of players. And, the thing with Nyck is as we have said, I mean, it would also be one thing if you were missing some wide receiver time to run track if you had played wide receiver your whole life. And this is something Charles Power, who's the best in the business, in my opinion, at doing evaluations and works for On 3, something he tells us all the time in general about wide receivers is that, guys, there's thousands of kids in high school that play the wide receiver position and play it pretty well. And it's very hard to kind of distinguish which receivers you should take and which ones you shouldn't. And, you know, I think with Harbor, it has always been about the upside. Like, what if this guy can live up to what is elite potential? And it's easy to get caught up in the potential without looking at what's the floor here, so to speak. Like, how much room is there to grow before he starts getting maybe towards the upper end of that potential? Well, frankly, there's a lot of room there because he's not a guy who's been catching the ball in wide receiver camps for his entire life. He's not a guy who's – I mean, how many passes do you catch in your life if you're a wide receiver from day one?
Mike Furry's son, Stone, who's still in high school, catches 200 balls a day.
Great name, by the way.
Outside of practice.
Yes.
You know?
I mean, you're talking about, what, 10,000? I mean –
Yeah, if you're going from Pop Warner to your high school career before you ever step foot on a college campus, easily, probably.
Think about just every warm-up throw, every pregame throw, every practice throw, every throw in your backyard. I mean, it's a cliche, but you have to practice things to get good at them. So what is the thing about to master a craft? What is it? What is the number? Like 10,000 hours? That's like I feel like is that a Japanese
I can look it up.
Concept? Chris is looking at me like I'm stupid.
No, I'm just curious.
There's basically you can master almost anything, but the amount of time you have to put into it is insane. And so for Nyck, I just go back to one, he got the taste of success and wanted more last season, and two, he looked around and noticed how much the guys around him had improved by going through spring ball, and he didn't get that last year.
Yeah, and it was so tempting with Nyck always. Like, even for, like, I feel like we had a decent amount of background, Wes, in knowing, you know, we didn't just, like, pull up Facebook and see a story about South Carolina landing Nyck Harbor, who has 5 stars and ran 10-1 in the 100. Like, all these things, you immediately go, he's going to be a stud. Like, if you don't, you know, have some baseline. But even for me, I'll speak for myself, it was always tempting to go, man, if he could just, you know, put it together, like, very quickly, because there is such immense physical tools there. But, man, being a receiver, like I always say, we lose sight of the number one attribute for a receiver, and that's you got to know how to play the position and catch the ball. And he was not as advanced as others that have been, like you said, Wes, playing the position for like their entire life from youth to now at a high level. He's continuing to make strides there, and we all know he's devoted even more time to the sport this spring. So with him fully dialed in, it's you hear about the strides he's making, and I think we're going to continue hearing more and more in that throughout spring.
By the way, it was Malcolm Gladwell in the book Outliers that said it takes 10,000 hours of deliberate practice to master a craft.
Yeah, and
good one.
I mean, obviously, there are people that say that's not true, whatever. But it is a thought, is a concept.
And again, once you hit hour 10,000, that doesn't suddenly mean you're now the master of it. It's just the thought of it takes a lot of time, a lot of practice, a lot of effort to become good at anything, especially something that you're not starting at zero from, but starting pretty low on the rung compared to other guys around you.
Yeah, and of course it helps that you are 6'5" and can run and are naturally strong and all those things and are going to be a mismatch for defensive backs, most defensive backs that you face. But again, I think we forget wide receiver is a skill position. It's not, and by skill position, you aren't just talking about a label. You're talking about it is a skill that has to be developed. It's not just go outrun everybody. There's a lot more that goes into it.
We'll get more from Coach Furry coming up next, talking about some of those young freshmen that are going to be challenging Nyck Harbor in that wide receiver room as this offseason goes along. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris on your Wednesday on the Game.